Hi, my name is Jessica Jackson of the Thriving in Motherhood podcast, and today I'm excited to introduce you to Gabe Cox. Now, Gabe is the mother of 3 boys, and today she is sharing why it's important for your kids to see you win. So she is someone who has written books, qualified for the Boston Marathon. She's an entrepreneur, and the impact that her personal goals have had on her children is incredible, but also the impact that their goals have then had on her and how it's an upward cycle for their family. So I am really excited to get into our conversation today.
Hi, I'm Jessica Jackson, and this is the new way to thrive in motherhood by leaning into who you are, what you love, your unique family situation, and personal mission to create a life that you actually want to live. I want to invite you to join me in saying no to the life of the exhausted supermom, burnout, victim thinking, being pulled in so many directions, suffering through survival mode, or being lost in motherhood, and say yes to building strong families and moving forward on our greatest goals in order to create a fulfilling life that we are excited to wake up to each day and become a soaring mother. This is the Thriving in Motherhood podcast.
I want to take just a moment and share a free gift that I've created for you called 3 Secrets to Do More of What You Love Without Hiring a Babysitter. This workshop is available for you to go watch right now and start taking action on so that you can do more of what you want to do, more of what's on your heart, more of what is important to you. With your children at home. You don't have to wait for them to be in school or for you to have loads of time. There are ways to start moving forward right now. And you can check that out at thrivinginmotherhoodpodcast.com/workshop. Hello, everyone. Tonight I'm here with Gabe Cox. Welcome, Gabe.
Hey, Jessica. Thanks for having me here. I'm super excited to have this conversation.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time with all of us because you're bringing a really unique angle to the show that we don't often talk about, which is entrepreneurship and motherhood, as well as the steps leading up to that, letting your kids see you win. So would you just take a moment and introduce yourself a bit to everyone here and kind of tell everyone what you do during your day and what motherhood looks like for you right now?
Sure. So I'm a podcaster, author, and coach, and I help women turn their passion and purpose into income and impact, all for the glory of God. And so it didn't start that way. I started just as a goals coach or a mental mindset coach. I started with a book and just an idea. And my passion is helping moms just dream bigger and go after their God-given goals alongside their kids in motherhood. And I have 3 boys. It's a different season because I have an elementary, a middle school, and a high school. So lots of different areas that I'm in. It's a very full plate, but we homeschool 2 of them. One's in the local charter school, and we just live a full and blessed life.
That is a beautiful description of motherhood for you right now. And I would love to hear what some defining moments for you have been in your motherhood journey.
I've had so many. So let me think about just a couple. One, I would say even just that being pregnant for the first time, because my plan was nothing went as planned. And I know in our conversation that we just had for my podcast, we talked about that. Like our plans are just not the same. I always think about like our thoughts are not God's thoughts and our ways are not his ways, right? His ways are bigger and better, but we just don't always understand them. And so I had planned on not getting married and not really having kids. That was the plan. I was going to be a broadcast journalist doing sports broadcasts. But when I got pregnant for the first time, and it was like a year into us being married. So I'm like, wow, this was fast. I got out of college, I got married, and I had now what's going on? I had that nurturing button turn on right away. And I was like, I think I'm meant to be a mom. And so I guess that was a defining moment for me because instead of just thinking about me, and I all of a sudden had to think about this other human being that I was growing inside of me. That was a defining moment for me. And then a couple others would be so a couple things when I had my third, this is kind of an interesting story. I'm not going to go too far into this story, but summer right before, it was like 2013, because I had him in 2014. I did not know I was pregnant, but I clearly heard that I was supposed to give up my restaurant management position and become a stay-at-home mom. And I was like, I don't know about that. That seems weird. And a month later, I found out I was pregnant. I was pregnant at that time. I didn't know. And so it was just an interesting journey. And that was a defining moment for me because I've been a workaholic. I worked 60 plus hours a week and still had 2 kids and homeschooling and all the things. But it was a trust thing. And really, when I came home on maternity leave, that was going to be my last day of work. My husband ended up coming home at the same time because they were restructuring. And I was like, God, do you want me to go back to work? And it was just, that was a defining moment for me because I had to say, nope, I'm going to listen and I'm going to just trust that things are going to be okay. And they were. So, and then one other, I broke my ankle. I qualified for the Boston Marathon. I'm a runner, avid runner. And a month later, I broke my ankle. And that was a defining moment for me because running has defined my life in some ways. And I had to learn how to go without it for a long time. It was like a 6-month recovery and really a year before I really got back into running. I'm not at my full capacity still years later. And that was a defining moment because I had to learn to lean on people and to ask for help because I couldn't even drive. I couldn't drive. So that was an interesting, like learning how to delegate, learning how to let go of control, letting people do it different ways than my way, right? And get it done. So those are a few I can think of.
Those are very significant. So maybe we can unpack them a little bit. What was it like for you to go from working 60 hours a week to coming home for the first time to a already established family with children?
It was hard, I would say. At first, it was super exciting. And I was like, okay, I can do this. But it was so unknown. There's always the fear of the unknown. I don't know what's going to happen next. And there was this big, bold world. And I was going, well, all I know is that I'm momming and I'm homeschooling and I have this third baby I don't know what it is about the third, but man, it's a lot of work. And so we were planning on having more, but I always say homeschooling families have big families and they're always like, I have 7 children. I have this. So I always tell people I have 5. I have Ethan and Micah, and then my third is 3 and 1. And so, we didn't have any more, but that's okay. And I always say, I don't know what we'd do without him because our life would be so boring. But it was a time of learning and growing. And I think that's when I really dove into the word. We were both out of work. And so my husband was looking for work and he actually went, I think it was 8 months. It was 7 or 8 months without. And that was me not working. And thankfully we had saved up my income for a while and we just trusted and we never went behind, which was really, really cool in itself. But I decided to dive into the word. So every morning when, I got up with my baby and we did the early morning feedings and things like that. I just read the word and I read the word front to back in 6 months for the first time ever. And so I think that just in itself, I had to slow down to do that. And I learned a lot in that time, a lot about trust.
That's amazing. So when you're going through this season, and you're talking about, one of the things we want to talk about is how to let your kids see you win. What did that look like? Where did this come from? Because you guys were in maybe some humble circumstances for a while.
Oh yeah. I'm telling you, everyone in their relationships has something that is the issue that you go back through. And it's always been finances for us. We've always had to trust in what's coming next. And it's been a good journey and we've learned a lot. Like we started out really financially unstable and not really understanding them, but now we know more. But I think the kids have seen that too. I'm thankful it's not our health. I'm thankful it's not other things, right? But when it comes to our kids seeing us win, one thing that I learned early on, I had said, because I said I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. I had all these dreams. And I would have thought I was going to do them. I had planned on being a writer from when I was very young. But when I became a mom, it was like I put those dreams on the shelf because I thought I had to. And what I learned, and I learned this when my kids were young, they were toddlers. At least my one was a baby when I started this journey of running. I think it was my second one that I just started racing and having some goals in that because I thought it was something to help keep me healthy. But also it gave me something to work toward. And that was my first step of really setting goals. And it was partly because I learned I wanted to know that I could do something hard. I wanted to know that I could accomplish something. And that helped me to dust those dreams off, like take it off the shelf and dust them off. But I realized they were different. And what was different about them was my purpose behind them. It wasn't so much about me and like accolades and what I thought I could accomplish. It was more about what do I want to be for my kids? And I knew I wanted to be an example. And that was like clear as day. It's not all about them. Like, I think we can be in motherhood and just sacrifice everything for our kids. But at the end of the day, one of my mentors a long time ago said, when my kids grew up or as they were growing, they were like, what do you do? Like, what do you do? And that hit her hard because she's like, all I've done is everything for my kids. That's all they have ever known. And they've never known anything different. And so we need to be that example for them. And it's like, I want them to go after big goals. Well, how are they going to do that? They need to see someone model it. And I think that's what our role can be, modeling those things and modeling what adulthood could be like that we can have dreams and that we can have our outside life to our kids.
So this is really exciting because you are beyond the toddler phase and this is no longer hypothetical for you. So what are some of these big goals and dreams that you've gone after, and how have you seen that impact your children?
So one of the big dreams after I started doing races and whatnot was the Boston Marathon. And that in the running world, in the running community, it's like the Super Bowl, right? It's the elite of the elite. And it's average runners being able to run with extraordinary runners. And you have to qualify based off of age and gender. You have to qualify by a time. And so I just thought, wouldn't it be cool to be able to do that? Now, I'll tell you, from when the last marathon I ran before I started trying to qualify, it would have been almost an hour I needed to cut off my time. So it wasn't this small goal. It was like, this seems so impossible. And so that was the first one. And some people might think, well, what does a race have to do with anything? It's not that big of a deal. But to me, it was just something that I could strive for. That was something I could do while I was momming, because I could run early morning, or it didn't have to affect my family too much, my running. But what I saw once I accomplished that goal, like at the finish line, when the first time I qualified, because I qualified twice, my kids were there cheering me on. And I think they were more excited for me than I was, because they just saw their mom accomplish something that they knew that she worked really, really hard for. And they were young. I think my oldest might have been 6 at the time. He was pretty young, but they knew that something big happened, right? And so I think that's one of the biggest things so that's one of the goals that I've had. Another goal was writing my first book, because I had said I wanted to be an author, but I think I let fear step in the way. And I was like, well, I've not done this yet. It was like a 15, 20-year dream. And I kept saying, maybe not, or putting it off. But what I realized is we can do it in chunks of time. Like, it doesn't, again, we don't have to go all in. We can do it. And it might not look like the timeline of someone who doesn't have kids. Maybe they can get it done in 3 months, but it took me 3 years. Well, it took me like 5 years to actually do it. But once it was done, it was like, wow, look at what I just put out. I just put that out there. Wow, that's crazy. And my kids were excited about it. And I think that's the thing, is when we bring our kids into our goals and they see us in the process, they see us fail, they see us the hard and all that, it kind of gives them permission to go after their goals and to fail. And actually, maybe this is something we can talk about too. My oldest is an elite gymnast, but I've learned from him because of all the fails he's had to go through in order to get to where he is. And so it's like this fire that goes between, we can learn from our kids just as much as they learn from us if we're willing.
Oh, absolutely. So I don't have an elite gymnast story, but we got a new food processor just to drive this point home. And I tried making banana ice cream on it, and I splattered stuff all over. And I don't even know where the stuff came out of. Like, I still don't know. But my 5-year-old walked in. She goes, "Oh, that's okay, Mom. It's okay to make mistakes and mess up when you're learning something." And I was like, did I say that? Like, okay, we're doing okay. But like, this is
to be able to, it's one thing on, in the kitchen to make a mistake, but to get to where you are with having written a book or qualify, shave an hour off your running time, or your son being able to compete at a, near Olympic level, right? Like that's a long process. That's a long journey.
But it starts with those things. Like a lot of, we think even in how we react, because our kids aren't really going to do what we do. They're going to do what, or not, I said that wrong. They're not going to do what we say. They're going to do what we do. But a lot of it comes with our reactions too. Like they can step on eggshells if they know we're going to react badly to a grade or whatever it is. And so I always try and think, and I am a reactor. So I've had to learn and not be that way. And I am that way a lot, but I've also had to go, what is my purpose behind this? Like, what is the purpose behind an A, for instance? I mean, I homeschool, I don't really grade. The transcript thing is a new journey in high school. So I do have to grade, but it's like, what is the purpose behind it? And for me, when it comes to homeschooling, why I homeschool is because I want them to learn how to learn, but I want them to have a love of learning. But I also want them to know God and make him known. And I want him to do that in their studies, right? I want them to see how things are interconnected. So is the purpose an A? No, the purpose is understanding. It's mastery. And if that's a C level work, but they master it, that's good enough, right? And so I have to think about how am I reacting, because they're going to take that on, whatever it is. And then also what's the purpose behind it?
Okay. So this is really powerful. Can we look at it to like, how do you mother someone who has a big goal, right? Your son, for example, has a huge goal. How do you, both by example for yourself, but also, you're trying passing this fire back and forth. Like what does that look like practically?
That's a really good question. And I would say he probably got the goal because he was watching us and watching how we were interacting and how we were coming up with these big goals and actually working toward them. So that was really cool. But he surpassed me in so many ways. And honestly, when he was little, we used to read success books together, or he didn't even probably understand them at that point, but I'd read them out loud, or I'd just, try and incorporate mindset and growth mindset and just personal development into that to build a strong foundation and a strong character. And he took to it. And so that's something that's really powerful. Is a lot of times, what are we thinking about? How are we thinking? Like for me, I want them to develop a character to know who they are and whose they are first and foremost, because that's going to matter in the long run. Like their heart matters more to me than their successes. And so, because I think about that, I mean, I have a teenager now. He's a junior next year. I only have him for not even 2 years. And I'm going, did I do enough? Am I doing enough? Right. I mean, I have these other fears now outside of the toddler stage. But for me, that's my thing. I'm like, I want him to succeed in gymnastics. Yes, he is an elite. He could go Olympic. He is on the Olympic track. That's his big goal. And he could do that. But I care more about his heart than I care about that. But I will do whatever I can. And we've sacrificed a lot for him to do it, along with a cross-country move to a new gymnastics place. But with him having these big goals, part of that, it almost makes me go, well, I can't quit on myself either. I mean, I'm not able, if he's doing that, I can't give up, because what am I going to say? What does that say? But also I look at it and I go, man, okay, especially for entrepreneurship, because that a lot of the time you do fail, right? You do something imperfectly, it fails, we adjust. But the thing that we forget about is the adjustment. Like we want to stay down and we don't want to get up. Well, he fails on his apparatuses 90% of the time, right? As they're learning skills, they fail more than they succeed. And those who don't want to fail quit. And I feel like that can be us. Like if we aren't willing to get back up, brush ourselves off, and adjust, because we don't need to try it again the same way, that's going to make us fail again. We need to adjust. We need to look at it, reflect what's going on, right? And I've learned that from him.
That is so beautiful. And I'm like, I don't know, just getting like so motivated to keep trying to do everything, right? Like just with my personal goals, because you're absolutely right. Like it is going to be a journey. It's going to be a process. It's going to require failure and learning and moving forward. Um, do you remember some of those books that you read that were most impactful for you and your son?
One of my favorites, this is my all-time favorite for a lot of reasons, was What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. It's by Dr. Shad Helmstetter. Actually, it's a book. I ended up going through kind of a dark season from college and early adulthood with, a depression and eating disorder and things. And I started on the healing journey, but part of that was my personal development journey. And that was one of the first books I read. And it really helped me recalibrate my mind. Because for me, what I've learned is that we need to have a bouncer in our mind. Like essentially it's the good in, like whatever goes in is going to come out kind of a thing. So we have to be very careful with what we're bringing in. And I like the verse, it's in Philippians. I can't tell you what scripture. I'm not very good with the numbers, but it's like essentially we're dwelling on what is beautiful and right and true and praiseworthy. And if it's not, then we're supposed to flush it. It's not of God. And so that was one of the first things I learned. So that was a good book. And I've read that with him. Another one was Attitude is Everything. I don't remember who wrote it, but another one where it's just like helping you check your mindset and check your attitude. And and then one more is Change My Attitude. And I think that was Josh. I want to say it was Josh McDowell, but maybe it was someone different. But that one, it was Lord Change My Attitude. That was one of the first books I read too. And it was about the Israelites wandering the wilderness for the 40 years, but how the complaining kept them from the promised land. Right. And so that just helped me to go, complaining doesn't do anything. And I can complain. Like I can get negative if I feel like it. I have to check myself. But those were a few of the books that we read together.
I love that. I haven't really I include my kids on lots of things, but like professional, well, I guess that's not true. We talk a lot about cognitive distortions. I'm their gatekeeper for black and white thinking, I guess. But this is a fun idea, especially as the kids start getting a little bit older.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what I'll tell you is it's kind of fun. Now I see books on my oldest nightstand and I'm like, are you reading that? What made you decide to read it? And it was like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill or what is it called? The Greatest Salesman in the World, Og Mandino. I love Og Mandino books. If you've never read them, they're like kind of fiction, but they have a success principle, very short, very easy reads. But yeah, he's starting to read some of those just on his own. I never prompted it.
Yeah, the power of example here. When you're talking about let your kids see you win, like the power of example and influence that we have in our own homes. I think sometimes moms, we can get discouraged because it seems like you're not doing anything, but like the impact that you can have on a life in your own walls is very significant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so true.
So, do you have any other practical principles about where you'd recommend people start? Like if this whole idea of setting goals or doing something big for yourself is new to you, where would you recommend people start?
That's a great question. And I would say there's three things. And I call it like the 3 pillars to setting and crushing goals. And they're super simple because I'm a simple person. I don't do everything simple, but I would call myself a minimalist and I try to keep things as simple as possible. But the first thing is really just seeing it. And I know you and I had talked about vision earlier, but it really is a matter of sit down and reflect on what is it that you're feeling pulled to do? What is something that's on your heart? What's a dream you've had for a long time? And start dreaming again and just write it all down. Like write down these weird, either big burly goals or really tiny goals, whatever it is, but something that you could do that is maybe a little bit out of your comfort zone. Because I think in order to do something great or in order to push ourselves and grow ourselves, we kind of have to get out of that comfort zone. And a lot of times, one of the things that I like to help women do is to essentially step into the fire. And it's the refiner's fire. Like and in order to do that, there's discomfort, right? Because you're being molded, you're being shaped, the impurities are being washed off of you or whatever. But then it helps to mold us into someone who can do what we were called to do, right? And just, but yeah, you have to kind of step out of that comfort zone and just think of something that is going to be a little challenging. It doesn't have to be too challenging, but just seeing it and creating that vision. And I like to just say, post it, just put a goal up in front of you. It can be a small enough goal, but just something that's a little challenging, and just put it in front of you. It's not going to happen if you don't do anything, but if you don't see it all the time, it's not going to happen either, because you're not going to think about it.
Today, I'm excited to share with you about the Made to Soar Next 90 Days program. It is a self-paced online course with lots of interaction from me that has transformed the lives of women from all around the world as they have learned to build unique family systems that support them in their own unique life circumstances, that allow the necessary and essential things of life to get done and leave time and energy to do what matters most to them. I'm going to let some women who have been through the program tell you a little bit more about their experience now.
Just mucking through the day was just survival. And then I was like, the thought of trying to do anything extra was like, well, that's just never gonna happen.
I think with Made to Soar, I don't know, I was probably hoping that it'd be the magic bullet for morning.
I mean, we had no systems in our house. I mean, we had no morning, we had no routines. Like, we were.
How can I infuse meaning into my life? And even if I do the same thing, how can I think about it differently so that I'm feeling fulfilled?
And so that was my goal in joining the Next 90 Days, was to figure out how to kind of handle all of these different domains. How do I become intentional with all of these things and make sure that I'm meeting my own expectations?
Now I have systems set in place that, like, you know, things like the laundry, just automatic, things get done.
Because I was able to have the foundation of some of these systems and routines, when things got crazy, I could still go back to those and be like, okay, well, at least the laundry got done. At least my kids got fed. At least I read the Bible and did my workout today.
So it helped me go through a couple big moves and big changes, and to keep some level of stability for the family.
Figuring out how do I homeschool? How do I do it with consistency and some level of discipline? And then how do I build a business and still find meaningful work outside of my home? All of that, I wouldn't have known how to organize it. It was all kind of just like spaghetti in my brain.
With Made to Soar, just gaining clarity about what I wanted my days and weeks to look like, my hours and my spare minutes.
This is how we get to where we want to go, and just changing those expectations has helped me be happier.
You know, I have power to change my circumstances, right? That I can put in new routines. I can solve some of these problems. I can think about things differently and realize that I have power to be in a better place.
And then the second thing is to plan it, because nothing does happen if you don't create a plan first. And the plan needs to fit your capacity and your season. So if you have young kids, it might mean one thing that we did was we exchanged babysitting. So once a month, I would take my friend's kids and she would take my kids once a month, like at different days. And we could do whatever we wanted for that day, right? And so I chose to write during that time or build my business or something. And so you think about, what can I do? What's my capacity? And then put a plan into action, knowing that you're going to have to adjust and be flexible, because it's not going to go the way you plan, right? You have to plan for the unknowns or the sick kids or the moves or whatever, but having something so you know, okay, I can do this and I can do this and I can do this while I'm driving. I can listen to a podcast, or in 5 minutes I can read or write or whatever. And then it's doing it. Like, you have to be in motion. And I think there's a waiting on God for the plan, but he can't really use us if we're not in motion. We have to be moving. So waiting, it can be active. And if he says pivot, we pivot, right? And so it's just remembering that he can lead, but we need to actually go and do something.
I love that so much. So can you give us an example of when you were writing your book, what that looked like for you?
Mm-hmm. So what's funny is when I was finished, so I've been writing my book, I think it really was a 5-year process. So I qualified for Boston Marathon in 2010. 2015 and ran it in 2016. And so once I qualified, I knew I wanted to write a book about, and the book was about taking a goal from start to finish and the success principles and the mindset behind it. But it's very faith-based. Like I actually rewrote it after I wrote it because I was like, yeah, I think I needed a little bit more in there about it, but whatever. That's another thing. I pivoted, right? God said, nope, I want you to add something. Okay, fine, I will. And then it published in 2019. So it was, a 3-year process, a 4-year process. But I would say the last year and a half was when I actually did it. And so what it looked like for me was I had to make a commitment to myself. I had to really see it. Like, what's the purpose behind it? And why does it matter? Like, what's the deep-rooted motivation for actually writing this book? And I think we need that mindset especially when we are juggling, either maybe you're a working mom and you're working outside the home. You don't want to do anything more if you have that plus your responsibilities at home, or even if you're at home, you have all these responsibilities, all these activities you're bringing them to. Why would I add something? There has to be that why. And for me, it was being an example, but it also was because I knew that was my gifting and I knew that was where I was being called. Like writing is a calling for me. And if I wasn't willing to say yes then when was I willing to be saying yes? Because if I'm not going to do it now, I probably won't do it later. And then I broke my ankle. And that gave me a lot of writing time, actually.
Oh my goodness. My worst health challenges come when I feel like there's something else I'm supposed to be doing that gives me time. And we should both find a better way to create time.
Absolutely. I know. That was the season when God said, stop. Because I could tell, if I told you all my roles, you would be exhausted by the list. Like, what in the world was I thinking, taking on all the things I was taking on? And he stopped me and he said, enough. But that season gave me time to write because I wasn't able to bring my kids to activities. I wasn't able to drive all these places and I needed to ask for help. So I took that time to be able to write. And I don't wish that on people. I don't want God to stop you in that way. And I always say, well, it might not have been God given, but it was God used, my broken ankle, And so it was that. And then just having that commitment of how much time am I willing to spend and then actually committing to it.
That's amazing. So during that process, what were some of those mindset things that maybe would apply to other people, whether they're writing a book or doing something else, that were most impactful for you?
Well, what I think is the funniest, and I don't know if I did a podcast about this, but I actually spoke into my memo because I just thought when I'm on a run, I get revelations. Like that's when I get my thinking time and I come up with all these ideas. But one of the things I was thinking about, because I was like, why is this taking me so long? Why am I not able to get this done? And part of it was I was afraid to put myself out there. And I think in anything that we do, that there's this comparison or fear of what others are going to think. And especially when it comes to writing, you're really bearing your soul. And so will anyone read it? And what if it's a big flop or just all these negatives and these doubts that come up? And I thought it was really funny and ironic because I'm writing a book about going after your goals and finishing them. And I'm like, who am I to write this book? Because all these things are happening. But so that would be my thing. The mindset is we can doubt ourselves and all the things, but we know what we know. Like we go through these experiences for a reason. And our trials can be our testimonies and our messes can be our messages. And we actually have to go through that in order for that to happen. But then we can have these doubts like, well, who am I to speak to this? Or I still have these, like for me, I can still get down. I can still kind of try and get to that dark place where I was, but I know that I'm healed from it. But that, it's the enemy trying to tell me, nope, you're not. Nope. And so we have to force ourselves to recalibrate our minds and to be willing to go after it. The other thing I was thinking with that is God calls the unqualified. Like think about Moses. He had a stutter and he was like, I can't speak to people. Well, he put Aaron in his life, right? He's going to put people where they need to be, but he also is going to call you to do something that you don't think you can do. And the reason for that is because then you have to rely on him and he's going to bring it through. And then you have to give him the glory and you don't get the glory. Right. And I just think that's really cool. And you see that in the Bible all over the place, that he calls the unqualified, and then he equips us to do what he wants us to do.
I love that. And so very practical. And thank you for that example as well, that I think we can all extrapolate to our own circumstances, our own goals. It's very powerful. As we're wrapping up today, I would love to know, what is something that you've mastered?
Mm-hmm. I thought about this. I thought you were going to ask it, and I don't know what I have mastered. I think I've mastered the fact that I can do something messy. I don't have to be perfect. I think I have mastered that, because I've learned that perfection is really not possible. There's only one who is perfect, and it is not me. And so I can get in and get messy. So I feel like I've mastered that. I'd like to say that I've mastered all the goals I have, or, whatever, but I feel like we're always arriving and we're always growing. And so that's, just being willing to do something messy.
I love that. That is powerful and a good testament to what you're talking about here tonight as well, to how you got to where you are today. What's something that you're still working on?
I'm still working on I would say my reactions. I'm still, you'd think that after 15 years, I would have mastered it, right? But I'm just working on being a good enough mom. I'm just working on that. I feel like I think I went around the desert and got through it, and then I get tested again. And so and working on also just having fun with my kids. I've never been the playing mom. So I used to have a lot of guilt about that. Now I'm like, I don't have any guilt. They don't care. They just want me to be present. So I'm working on making sure that I am present in some way.
I have recently arrived at that same conclusion, just realizing they just want you. It doesn't matter what you're doing or not doing. They just want your attention.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something, like, when I'm working, a lot of times I have 3 boys. They're loud and crazy. I've learned to tune everything out, but I have been working on remembering to stop and turn and focus when they come to ask me something. And it's like, they're not interrupting me. They're a part of my life. Right. And I want them to see themselves like that. So I think I'm working on that too.
I love that. When you look back to yourself as a brand new mom, 15 years ago, you said 16 years ago?
Yeah, almost 16.
Yeah, all the way to now. What is the biggest change that you see in yourself?
I'd like to say more patience, but that's not it. I think the biggest change is that I'm learning that it's not about me. It's funny, because not that I thought that before, but I think we're just selfish by nature. And so I have learned that I have to think about there's others first. But also that if I'm not full, I have nothing to give to. So from the beginning of motherhood, where I thought I had to sacrifice everything and I needed to do everything for everyone else and all that, I learned that I sometimes do have to put myself first when it comes to caring for my needs, so that I can care for everyone else. And I'm a much better mom when I do that.
Well, Gabe, thank you so much for sharing your wisdoms, experiences, some stories, and things that you've been learning over the last 15 years. It has been a wonderful, impactful conversation for me, and I'm just so excited to share it with everybody listening.
Yeah, it's been fun, Jessica. Thanks for having me.
So where can everybody find you before we part ways tonight?
Yeah, best way is just the website. It's redhotmindset.com. You can find Pursuing Goals God's Way. That's my podcast, and I'm not on social media, so you can't find me there. You can find me there, but I don't interact there.
That's good to know. And then if people are interested more in what you do and how you kind of serve women, is there something that you have to offer them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, when we were talking about goal setting and whatnot, one of the things I have a couple of things. You can find a couple free workshops, one on the Red Hot, the 3 pillars to setting and crushing goals. I don't know. I'm losing my words, but I also have a 10 disciplines checklist. And so if you like checklists and whatnot, it's like 10 ingredients that you need in order to accomplish a goal. And they might not be exactly what you were thinking in your head, like, oh, I need this. Well, it's just 10 different disciplines. And you can find that at redhotmindset.com/checklist.
Thank you so much. And I'm excited to send everyone your way so they can keep learning from you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Where you are planted, watch the blossoms grow.